minute. Looks like we still have some people coming in.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, yeah, I figured with the snow and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Maybe I'll go ahead and just do my little introduction while people are still coming in.
yeah,
Um, well, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight. My name's Trisha Ryden. I'm an adult services librarian at the Wigan Memorial Library. And thank you so much for joining us for another of our winter series of Veronique's cooking demonstrations. We're so happy to have her back for another episode. This one is Soups On, which couldn't be more timely with the weather that we're having. If you've never joined us for one of these presentations before, the series started out during the pandemic and has become a wonderful winter tradition. Um, and I'll just give a couple of reminders before we get started. One is that the cameras and microphones are turned off for presenters so that for all attendees, so that we can all see and hear Veronique. However, you're welcome to write any questions or comments you have in the chat box. And this is important, in order for us to keep track of the attendance at the program, if you're watching this program with someone else tonight, if there's two of you watching or three of you watching, we ask that you write in the chat box just a +1 if there's another person with you, or a +2 if there are two people with you. That way we get an accurate count of how many people are really watching. We are recording the program and it'll be posted to the library's YouTube channel in the next few days. And as always, we'll be sending along the ingredients and recipes list probably tomorrow morning. Um, and finally, I'd just like to thank Veronique so much, as always, for joining us. Many of you may know that Veronique is a very special person to the Wigan Memorial Library. She's been a staff member. She's been the head of our board of trustees. She's been a wonderful presenter of travel programs and, of course, this fantastic cooking series. And we're just very lucky to have her. So thank you, Vera. I'll turn things over to you.
great. Thank you, Trisha. And it's a pleasure to continue doing a lot of things for the Wigan Memorial Library. Everybody there, I consider my friends. So good evening, everybody. Bonsoir, bonsoir. So tonight we're going to talk about soups. And as usual, we're going to talk about a little bit of like French background. I'm going to make some simple French soups with you. And so, no, we are not making a soup à l'oignon. Okay, we are not making an onion soup with a big slab of cheese on top. Soup à l'oignon, as everybody knows, because that's the most famous French soup apparently in the world. It's caramelized onions, beef broth topped with melted cheese, sometimes with a slice of bread with melted cheese on top. Funny enough, that's something that's mostly served in restaurants, like a cafe or a brasserie. It's a real, heartwarming dish. I've never had this soup growing up. I've never known anybody in my family making it. I've never known any of my friends making it. That's really something that's made in restaurants, not like an at-home dish. I'm sure some people make it, but it's not really prominent, I would say. So the go-to soup for families when we grew up is the potage aux légumes, and so that's like mom's soup, and that's what most people have for the beginning of your dinner at night. Another thing is in France, we don't eat soups for lunch. That's, I don't know if it's in other countries than America, but we only eat soups at dinner time. After I moved here and I was telling my dad I was having soup for lunch, he was like entirely shocked and like mortified. Like he thought I had become destitute or something. That I just had to eat soup for lunch. French people don't have soups for lunch. So that's only a dinner time thing. So the go-to for family is just basically a blended vegetable soups. And usually we use seasonal vegetables. So we have these soups in the winter. And so we have soups made with leeks, potatoes, and carrots, or like root vegetables like turnips and parsnips. But that's usually a very simple soup. And I remember my mom making the soup. It's basically a saucepan of cold water, cut up all the veggies, put them in there, let it, boil for half an hour, mix it with an immersion blender, and that's the soup. And the treat was to be able to put a piece of butter in it or sour cream. And you usually have that with a slice of bread. Um, so the homemade soups, they're kind of inspired from this book. I'm going to show this book. It's kind of like your Joy of Cooking equivalent, I would say. It's called Tante Marie. It's like Aunt Mary's 1,000 basic traditional French recipes. That's a reprint from the 2000s. My mom had one that was much thicker, with thicker paper and nice old photos. This one has kind of like updated photos, not many photos in there. So there are just some, yeah. But mostly it's written, it's very basic recipes, as you can see. And it's kind of like the Bible for anybody who learns how to cook. A lot of women were given that Bible by their mother-in-law when they got married. I think that was the case for my mother and a lot of other moms I knew. So the first edition was published in the late 20s, early 30s. And it was really simply called The True Home Kitchen. I mean, in French, obviously. And then it kind of like became a staple in households, kind of like like I said, your Joy of Cooking. You can still find it online. It's actually a pretty steep price for the most recent edition printed. But it's nice because it gives you like basics. And it goes from soups all the way to desserts, going through sauces, through pâtés, entremet, main dish. So it's really kind of like a good base to have. So that's the Tante Marie. And in France, usually soups don't have meat in them. So here we have like the chicken soup and things like that. If there's meat, it's called a stew, and it's not as liquidy with like the broth. So the only meat soup that I know of in France is the poule au pot, and that was usually when you buy. So when the hens don't produce eggs anymore, they are still slaughtered, and you can buy them. And because they're kind of like tough, you cook them, you simmer them in a big pot with a lot of water and some root veggies like celery, and leeks and carrots usually. And so your mom would let that simmer like all day on the stove, and it's called poule au pot. That's the hen in the pot. Um, and usually that was mainly to produce broth. Um, I, d- I don't really remember. Yeah, maybe we did the meat. Like my mom would pull out the meat from the carcass at the end and mix it with rice. That's kind of something you eat when you're sick, when you have like a stomach bug or something. So that's kind of like a blend diet kind of thing. But usually that dish, the simmering of it was just made to make broth. And broth you would have, like, with a little pastinas, and some carrots and things like that. Um, so soups in France, we usually use water as a base or vegetable broth. I would say 80% water and 20% vegetable broth. So if we're going to talk soups, we're going to talk base first. So water versus broth, it really depends what soup you're doing and what flavors do you want to like enhance. Do you want to enhance, have more of the prominent flavor being some roasted vegetables maybe? Then you don't really need vegetable broth. You can just use water. So it depends what kind of like final taste you want to achieve. Um, and for vegetable broth, so there's a couple options. You can get some vegetable broth from the store, or you can make your own. So it's really easy to make your own. Usually those, even though there's low sodium option and stuff like that, there's definitely ingredients added that you're not really interested in um, having. Like there's cane sugar in this and pear juice concentrate, even though it's like organic, good quality, broth. So I like broth, simple broth made with leftover vegetables cuttings. So that's my baggie that I keep in the freezer and I keep adding to it. And I don't know if we can see. So I'm going to tell you what's in there. There's carrot peels. There's like snap peas that were left over, snow peas that were left over. There's leftover onion cut up. There's garlic peels. I don't know if everybody knows, but actually, when you buy garlic powder, it's mostly made of dehydrated garlic peels of the garlic cloves that are ground up. That's what it is. So it's super fine to use garlic peels in there, onion peels. And then a little tip when you buy fresh, like we just bought fresh parsley for one of the recipes we're going to make. Cut the ends off. You're not going to serve the ends, the stems. Just cut them off and add them to your bag here. They're great for stock. Um, so, and you can do that with cilantro or basil or anything like that. Just cut the stems and don't throw them. Use them, keep them to make stock. So that's for vegetable broth. If you want to make chicken broth or meat broth, so mostly chicken, you just can use those veggies plus chicken meat. So the difference now, there's a lot of sold in the store, a lot of bone broth, beef stock. I always get confused with it too. And stock is made with bones. So stock is made with bones, and so it's stronger and it usually gets thicker because of the collagen in the bones. So stock is not really a good base for soups because it's going to get too thick. Stock is a base for gravies, sauces, things like that. So you want to stick with broth. And now I think it's confusing because in the stores they have like broth and stock kind of close together on the shelves. So for making soups, you want stock. And I'll say the same for chicken stock. If you want to make chicken stock, sometimes like you'll buy some chicken breast and you have, one too many in the package, or you can keep a leg or something and just freeze it in another bag from your veggies. But then you can just throw that in a big simmering pot of water along with your veggies, and you'll get good chicken broth. And you can also add some herbs. So here I have some dried up thyme. You can add rosemary. You can add bay leaves. Gives a good flavor to stock. So my mom always threw a bay leaf in every soup that I saw, every stew. So that's a good addition to have. And if you're desperate, you can always keep something like that in your pantry. Chicken bouillon, something sodium free possibly would be better because otherwise you end up having like really salty soups or dishes. Um, so that's kind of like if you're desperate, and it's good to keep in your pantry just in case. In France, we actually use those little Maggi cubes of dehydrated bouillon. Um, and that's the same. That's like, oh, if my mom didn't have time to make any broth, you just use one of those. But that would be kind of rare. But they're good to have on hand. It's mostly still made of salt and some fats and things like that, other than the real strong flavor that you want. So you're definitely better to make your own. So in France, there's three names for soups because in France we like to have different names for everything. Sorry. So there's soup, la soup, and soup is basically you see the different elements. You see the broth and you see the pieces of meat, of veggies, of pasta, beans. It's not blended. And that's the one I hated growing up. So mostly my mom made blended soups. But when we would go on vacation and to a restaurant, they'd have soup, non-blended soup, and we could see all the pieces. And we were always like picking and poking, figuring what was what. And so, just a fun fact. So potage Potage is the blended soup, the soup I was talking about, where it's basically uniform. Everything's been mixed either with an immersion blender or with a regular blender. And I'll talk about which one to use in different cases. And the thickness is just achieved by blending the ingredients. So it's a little, obviously, it's thicker than broth, but the thickness is just there's nothing added. There's no cream. There's no you can blend it right in your pan, in your saucepan after you've cooked everything, and so that's the easiest, you know, way to have a slightly creamy soup. And the way to achieve the thickness is to take out some liquid before you blend it, and I'll show you that afterwards. And then the last texture soup in France is the velouté. And it sounds kind of like velour, like velvet. And usually it's a more creamy texture, and that's achieved by adding something. So it's either you start with a roux, a base, with butter and flour so that everything thickens as it cooks, or you add cream at the end, usually creme fraiche, not sour cream. Sour cream is going to curdle, so you have to be careful here, or you have to temper it, or an egg yolk. When I was a kid, my grandma would thicken a lot of soups with an egg yolk, and she would always say, that's good for you. So usually volutes are the ones that take more time, or they are more refined, and they are a little more technical to prepare than the soup and the potage. So soup and potage is basically the same thing except blended, not blended, and then velouté is a little step above with some creamy element. So today I've decided to make a velouté of chou-fleur or creamy roasted cauliflower soup. So it's a soup that originates in Brittany. And that's because the star here, the cauliflower, is grown there year round. Brittany has super humid and temperate climate, and the soils are enriched by the salt air and the winds blowing over them. And about 80% of the cauliflower that's sold in France is produced in Brittany. And so that's why the soup originates there. I would say it's a pretty regional soup. And it's become more popular over the years. So for this soup, so soups are going to go either two ways. Either we're going to put the ingredients in a pan of water, of cold water or cold broth, and get it to a simmer and cook it that way. You can saute the veggies before. Or a really nice way to get a lot of flavors out of the ingredients, which we usually do for, sorry for the noise, for root vegetable like butternut squash soup and things like that. Or here, my cauliflower. So I've roasted the cauliflower and half an onion for 40 minutes at 400 on parchment paper. And what I've added to it, because obviously it has a little different color, is the spice. And once again, like I said, most French soups are very simple. They don't have like 100 ingredients. So in this soup, we're getting a nice taste from the spice mix. And the spice mix we're using traditionally in this soup is called Ras El Hanout. And Ras El Hanout, it's a complex Moroccan spice mix. It's a spice blend. There's no real recipe. There's a lot of recipes out there for how to make it, but there's not like one recipe fits all. It's usually warm spices mixed together, and that spice is used in a lot of Moroccan dishes like the meat tagines, the veggie tagines, the couscous. It's used to rub on meats before you grill them. Um, so warm spices, they are cinnamon, cloves, cardamom, cumin, turmeric, coriander seed, nutmeg, ginger, and allspice. So that kind of sounds like Chinese five spice, which a lot of people here I think are more familiar with than Ras El Hanout. But Chinese five spice has fennel seeds or anise added to it. And so I would not substitute that for this recipe. You can either make a simple version of this spice yourself and with things you probably have on hand in your pantry, in your spice drawer. And that's basically equal amounts of cumin, coriander. If you have the seeds, you ground it, and smoked paprika. And then at the end, put a pinch of ginger and cinnamon. And you can make a small amount with doing like 1 teaspoon, 1 teaspoon, 1 teaspoon, fairly easy. Or you can go a little easier and you can use something that's pretty close, and that's a North Indian spice, and that's called garam masala. And you'll probably use that to make some chicken dishes, Indian dishes. So it's fairly close as far as the taste. Obviously, the taste ranges depending on how many spices you use and how much for making your ras el hanout. But I was not able to find ras el hanout here. So I went for the garam masala, and it will be a pretty good substitute. So for this recipe, what I did is I chopped up the cauliflower. I chopped the florets in half, so they're about equal size. I put the onion, and I mixed everything with 2 tablespoons of olive oil, 1 teaspoon of garam masala. I think I may have gone a little more with that, just to really have a good taste, and salt and pepper, real lightly. Roasted them in the oven, so to get all the flavors really potent in. And since I've roasted everything, I'm not now gonna go and boil it in a saucepan like a regular soup, because it's already cooked. The veggies are already cooked. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use a blender, and I'm gonna put my veggies in there. And I'm gonna try not to burn my fingers. So here's a nice way. You have the parchment paper, just flip it and pour everything in here. Easy, right? And I'm gonna keep a couple florets to decorate in the bowl when you serve. So just keep a couple of florets, like one per bowl. So I also wanted to say those recipes, and I've talked about it before. In France, I mean, you can multiply it certainly, but we usually make a recipe with like 4 servings, like 4 cups. So that was about a full cauliflower. And then I'm just gonna add some vegetable broth and blend it. So when you use a blender this way, to get the texture that you want, you're always gonna put less of the broth than the recipe was calling for at the beginning. So I'm gonna start with 3 cups instead of 4 cups, and then we'll see what texture it has. And depending on what I want, some people like really thick soup, some people like really thin soup. It's really personal. So I would say go between 3 cups and 4 cups of broth. And so I'm gonna pour the broth in here. So that was 2 cups. Usually, what I'll do is I'll put 2 cups and probably like 1 cup of water. It doesn't need to be all broth. Um, and one trick, so I'm gonna blend that for half a second. It's gonna be loud. Okay, so serve it so that you can see. So I like the texture. Um, it's it's not too thin, not too thick. And if you like it, like you can blend it longer. If you like it really, you know, more even texture, I like that texture. Um, and then you're gonna decorate with like a little florets. You can also roast pumpkin seeds. I found out that air fryers are super good to roast seeds. So just like put a handful in your air fryer for like 5 minutes, and they come out like toasty and great. And you can sprinkle your soup with them. And then I've also roasted some. So you can have that with like a nice slice of crusty bread. And so roasted some bread in the oven. Or yeah, this morning I was at the bagel store, and they had, the 1 day old bagels. So I got a bag because what I love to do with those, other than eat them anyways in the car as I'm driving home, is making chips, bagel chips. Don't need to buy bagel chips full of salt and knows what. Just take a bagel, cut it in little slices all around, and roast it in the oven, 350, 15 minutes. They're perfect. You can serve them like with an appetizer bowl with hummus or soft cheese, things like that. Or you can serve like a little bowl with along with a soup. So that's a little side tip here, um, to have an accompaniment to the soup. So that was our beautiful cauliflower soup. You can also add a potato if you want it to have a little more like texture. Um, I don't think it needs it, but some people like to add potatoes to everything, and that's fine. My mom would actually add a potato to that soup. So that's another thing. And just roast the potato with everything else and, blend it with the rest. So that's the cauliflower soup. So now I have cauliflower soup for the end of the week, which is great. You can also add pancetta as a topping. I almost forgot. Pancetta goes great with cauliflower soup. So that's when I buy the pancetta, I just always like freeze off, and you just like saute that in a pan for 5 minutes, 5 minutes, or you can even put it on the side of your tray when you roast the veggies and roast it at the same time. Just keep it separate on the side and sprinkle that on the soup. Adds a little touch too. And depending on how you like if you need a lot of spices or not, you can sprinkle a little touch of nutmeg on the cauliflower soup too at the end. Remember, nutmeg goes well with um, cauliflower and potatoes. It marries really well. So that was the cauliflower soup. Second soup. Second soup, it's a winter classic. It's a potage poireau pomme de terre, which is a potato leek soup. Um, and it's gonna allow me to give a little bit of other tips. So let me move this over. And get my ingredients here. So again, it's fairly simple. Um, and I really like to teach these simple dishes or soups or things like that because I think if it's too many ingredients, too complicated, like you probably will never want to even try to make it, or you'll make it once and be kind of like, I have all these ingredients left. And like garam masala, you can find it in like the little like packets. You don't need to buy like, a whole jar. I like it. But so these soups I'm showing, you can pretty much make with basic ingredients that you most likely will have or that don't cost much to get. So the potato leek soup, so it's gonna be a blended soup, a potage. So the ingredients are the white part of a leek, two big russet potatoes, a medium onion, and a big handful of fresh parsley. Gonna marry all the tastes. So you can see here, I had peeled my potatoes in advance, and what are they in? Oh, I've kept them in water. Um, Grandma taught me that trick. My grandma would love to prepare hours early when we would come for lunch on Sunday lunch with the family. And she always had her potatoes sitting in the water. It helps them keep them fresh. They don't, get those black spots. They don't dry up. So it's a great way to keep potatoes if you peel them in advance. Don't just leave them out there in the air. So you have two big russet potatoes. And I wanted to talk about the leeks a little bit. I know some people are kind of scared of them because usually they're full of dirt because they grow inside sand and dirt. And if you buy them, the farmer's market or something, they'll definitely have some nice grains of sand in there. So make sure you wash them really well. Easiest way is you cut, you know, you cut it in half, and then you clean it in a bowl of water in the sink so you can really open all the fibers and make sure you don't have any dirt left. Fortunately, those they were obviously washed beforehand. So that's basically that's like a leek. That green part, that's really tough. But guess what it's good for? Vegetable broth. So all this is going to be cleaned because as you can see like here, the dirt is going to be cleaned, and I'm going to chop it up like quite fine and put it in my baggie for the next vegetable broth. So that's what it will be used for. You can find frozen, already chopped, washed, etc. leeks at a store named Trader Joe's. That's the only place I've ever found them. And I believe they come from either France or Belgium. The north of France is an area where they grow a lot of leeks. So that's a nice thing to keep in your freezer, and they're frozen. It's a nice thing to keep in your freezer to add to dishes or even to do like sauteed leeks. They work wonderfully. So, because they're not always available, the fresh ones either at the store. I found that's kind of like a hit or miss kind of item. So I have my leeks here, and I'm just gonna slice it in like little rondelles. So they are like half little slices here, and get everything pretty much the same size. And then I forgot to turn on my pan. So that's my saucepan. Have some olive oil at the bottom, like one nice tablespoon of olive oil. You can use you don't need to use olive oil. You can use canola oil. I like to use olive oil to get things started. And so when my mom sauteed vegetables, she always added there was always oil, and then added just a little piece of butter. And from what I was told, is it prevents things to get too hot and burn. You want to just like saute the vegetables to just get the flavor out quickly, not like burn them. The potato we can cut in, like eighths. We don't need to cut it super small. Um, so, Potato. We want it to cook faster. Obviously, you cut it smaller, that size cubes. It's really good. And you want soups to simmer, not boil. Um, you want to bring, the temperature to a boil, the water, when we put the water or the broth. But after that, you want it to kind of like lower it and simmer. Um, so you don't lose all the vitamins in the water and also the flavors. So, and I can chop my parsley a little bit, but not much. Same, I rinse the parsley really heavily. So I have all my veggies here. You obviously don't need to saute so we're gonna saute the vegetable first, just to get them a little coloring and flavor. So let me get the butter. And just, a little piece of butter. I'm not really measuring. It's probably half a tablespoon, something like that. Um, just something to coat the pan with the oil. And so try to put just the onion and the leeks first. No, you can't, but it's smelling really good. So those were really, especially beef soup, other than the veggie soup, the potage aux légumes were really the traditional winter soups. I have to tell you, butternut and all these squashes, they are something that came to France about 20 years ago, but not when I grew up. When I grew up, that was kind of a foreign thing we didn't really know about. We didn't have too many winter squashes. We had summer squash, but not winter squashes. So they've become definitely popular now, but not when I grew up. And then in the summertime, we still had soup, but we had cold soup. So like tomato soup, gazpacho, soups like that. And obviously less frequently than, these soups. And soup was not a meal either. So in France, when you have soup, there's soup at the beginning of dinner. You have a bowl of soup, small plate, plate of soup, and then you'd still have a dish, some meat or some egg or some pasta dish or something. Um, so that was not like a whole meal. That's what I'm trying to say. And maybe that's why also we don't make, I think those big quantities, because we're just gonna eat like probably half a cup per person at a time. So we saute that, let it like, lightly. It's like on medium high for a couple minutes. Forget to add some salt. It's salt, not too much. Remember, you can add what you need later when everybody has it in their place. Pepper. And then add all the parsley. Gonna give it a nice, darker green colors. And that's the only herb basically in there, the parsley. Um, and for that soup, there's a lot of flavors in here already. Fragrance, onion and leek is quite potent. So I really use water. I really don't think it needs broth. That's another difference in the soups in France. Here, I feel like every soup recipe online or in a book is like start with either vegetable broth or chicken broth. In France, I would say mostly we use water. And the secret is maybe simmering, cooking slower to get more of the flavor just out of the ingredients that we already have here. If you add broth here, you're gonna mix, these flavors that were extracted from all these other ingredients that you had here. Like I don't really want carrot, anything in here. I just want the leeks and the potatoes. Um, you don't have to put onion in that. You could just put, let's say, 2 leeks, white from the leeks, and no onion. The onion is just gonna bring up the taste a little more. Of the leek, but you don't have to. I've always said, cooking is not baking. Cooking, you can kind of adapt to what you want, can adapt the amount of an ingredient. You can adapt, you can omit something that's kind of redundant or you don't particularly like. Um, so now that everything's kind of like translucent, the onions, the leeks, that's kind of where I wanted to get it. No more than that. I don't want it to be, charred or anything like that. I'm gonna go ahead and add water. Um, I figured that this tells me how much water is in there. And that's pretty easy. Yeah, that's my water kettle, but 1 liter. So that's what we want. We want 4 cups. And here, because we're gonna simmer and cook with the lid open, we can put the generous 1 liter because some of it's gonna evaporate. So. So that's gonna simmer for probably 30 minutes. So I'm gonna let it do its thing. Obviously, I will be eating it without you. Sorry. And so for this soup, if you cook a soup in a saucepan, the best way, one, not to have to dirty several tools, and two, because it's convenient, you just use an immersion blender, right in the saucepan, right on the stove at the end when it's done. And so then you don't need to, dirty another bowl, another. So I'm always trying to, show easy ways to make things, so you don't have to do a lot of dishes or, something that's easier. So an immersion blender, highly recommend to have one. It's great. It's great for mixing items, sauces, and then usually you can, change the accoutrement there. There's usually a whisk with it, and there's usually a small mixing a small bowl where you can like cut herbs and things like that. So that's a great ingredient to have. And some of them have different speeds on them. This one doesn't, but it's good for the task. So highly recommend. So that soup, we're gonna let it, get to simmer and 30 minutes, and then blend it. And so when you have a soup in the saucepan, you're gonna use the immersion blender. you're not sure what kind of texture you're gonna end up. Like, did I put too much water? Did not enough water evaporate in the end? It's gonna be more liquidy than I thought. Because if you blend it and it's too liquidy, then either you can try to add some cream or try to thicken it, but that's going to be kind of hard to do it this way. So what I do when I do a soup in a saucepan is I always have a bowl ready, and say I have a bowl ready that's empty, and you have a ladle, and right before you're gonna use your immersion blender, just scoop out like 1 or 2 ladles of liquid, just the liquid, not the ingredients, and put it in your bowl. Use your immersion blender. Go around and see, what kind of texture you're getting. Is that what you want? If it's too thick, then just keep adding a little bit of water, and with the ladle, like half a ladle at a time. So that's an easy way to get the texture that you want. And if you want to make it, so this is going to be a potage once we mix it with the blender. If you want it to be a velouté, which I talked about at the beginning, you can always add cream. Remember, the best is to add creme fraiche. You can find it in some stores. Sour cream is not creme fraiche. So if you want to add sour cream, it's fine, but you have to temper it. So to temper it, you take a bowl, you take a ladle of the blended liquid soup, you put it in the bowl, you add a tablespoon or 1 or 2 tablespoons of sour cream, you mix it in there, and then you mix it back. It's kind of like making a gravy. And then, when you add cornstarch, and then you put it back in there. We never add cornstarch in French soups in general. So I'm not recommending that here. I'm sure you can do it, but that's not what we do. And in France, we add a vache qui rit. So that's the laughing cow. Those little wedges of cheese that you find in the non-refrigerated aisle of the supermarket next to the cheeses. So for kids, that's what we do these days. We just you take 1 or 2 of the wedges and you mix them in the soup. It actually gives a super nice taste, and it's good in a sweet pea soup, like a sweet pea bean soup, or a broccoli soup. Like it's kind of like broccoli and cheese, except it would just be a broccoli potato soup, and you mix it, and then you add a couple of the vache qui rit. You can also add cream cheese. Same, you need to temper it. You can't just like add a blob of cream cheese and hope it's gonna like melt in there. So those are like tricks to if you want to make a velouté out of originally a potage. Because if you wanted to make a velouté with a base roux, you would have had to have the roux made at the beginning and mixed with the veggies. So a roux is butter and flour. You warm up the butter, you add flour, you cook it, and then it thickens, and then you add the vegetables, you coat the vegetables with it, and then you add the liquid. So a roux is a nice way to thicken soups, but you have to do it at the beginning. You can't do it at the end. And voila. This soup, I will send you a photo of the blended soup with the recipes, but this soup is gonna have to cook for 30 minutes or 25 now. So I will say I'm opening the floor for questions if people have questions.
We do have a comment before anybody has time to write their questions in. Kathy said, Vero, I borrowed the library's fondue pot for a party last weekend using your recipe from your class, fondues and fondants. Huge success. Thank you for your guidance.
Super. Thanks, Cassie. I'm glad it worked out. And I'm glad the pot is being used. That's awesome.
Absolutely. Yes. If people don't know, that's part of our library of things at the library.
Yeah, and you can just go online and watch the class again, right, Tisha? And
Oh,
I don't know if you
absolutely.
can find the recipes.
All of the classes are on our YouTube channel. All the classes that we have uh, recorded are on our library's YouTube channel. Kathy says, easy to use that fondue pot. So that's good to know.
That's great.
Mhm. Kathy asks, do you stir your vegetables when they're roasting?
Yes, because when they're roasting in the oven, I flip them over once. Um,
Mm,
yeah, so just with the big spatula, so they kind of roast on both sides. Yeah, but just once.
yeah. Rachel says both soups look delicious. It's making me hungry and I already had dinner. Same, Rachel. Me too.
Yeah, sadly, the cauliflower is like really. I keep like going to like, ooh. I might try a little bit, even though I already had dinner.
Vero, does it not make I've never, I have to admit, never used an immersion blender. Does it not sort of splatter when you do it in a saucepan like that?
No.
Oh,
So the
great.
trick, yeah, sorry, I couldn't show, but the trick is to put it all the way. Don't be afraid; it's not going to damage your pan because the
Mm,
blade is protected by this cover, and sometimes it's metal, but it's still protected. So the trick is to put it at the bottom to keep going around the bottom of the pan like that. If
mm,
you lift it, that's when it splatters all over because it shoots out of the sides. And when if you have like a bigger pan, like one of those bigger stock pots or something, you
mm-hmm,
can tip it on the side and blend this way in the corner.
mm.
And so just blend, always have the head of the blender at the deepest part, and it will not splatter. And you just use it, you keep moving it around, and it really does an amazing job.
That's awesome. All right. Does anyone else have any questions? People should know if you came in late that we'll be sending out the ingredients list and the recipes probably tomorrow morning. And also, oh, apparently there's a question in the Q&A. I'm sorry, I didn't see that. Um, Kathy asks, do you think it would be okay to substitute broccoli for cauliflower in that first soup recipe? Would it taste okay?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think so. You could also try the like the broccolini, like
Mm-hmm.
broccoli rabi or something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah. I think it would be fine. It's in the same family, the cruciferous. So I really think it would be fine. Or you could mix one of the you could also like do cauliflower soup and but then do like roasted broccoli to put on top or vice versa, kind of things like that. Just to add a little more dimension to it.
Awesome.
Well, I hope everybody had fun and liked it, and I know it was simple, but it's French cooking. So usually it's a little, it's either super simple or it's either like super elaborated. So kind of like two extremes, but I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you try to make one. And I know I'll see some faces tomorrow at the cooking hugger class,
Oh, the
uh,
cookbook club,
the
yes,
cookbook club.
at the library.
Yeah. And otherwise, don't hesitate to reach out to Trisha if you have any questions for me. She can pass them on. And like she said, the class and the recipes will be emailed to you tomorrow. And yeah, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. I'm happy to answer questions. And Trisha, should we say that the next cooking class, what the next cooking class will be?
Yes, then yes, go ahead.
I don't remember the date though.
Oh, I will find the date while you're.
Okay, so the next cooking class will be island cooking. And I got this idea from Cindy from the library. shout out, who brought me back a little booklet of island recipes from Martinique, which is in the French Antilles. And I was going through it and I was like, "Ah, that would be a great thing to do this winter.
Mhm.
Talk about the islands, about culture there and things like that. I even have an apron my mom brought me back from there, another apron, and make some delicacies from the islands. So I think it'll be a nice from the French Antilles. I think it will be a nice kind of like a different style thing for this next time. And Trisha, what's the date?
It is Thursday, February 26th at 6 p.m. on Zoom. And Vera, you're also getting some lovely thank you messages. Debbie says, "Thank you. I really enjoyed your presentation." Terry says, "Thank you, Veronique. I always learn something from you." Susan Wilbur, hi, Susan, says, "Thank you, Veronique." Kathy, "Thank you, Vero." Joni, "Thank you. I really enjoyed this class." Lorraine, "I really enjoyed this. Thank you." And I echo all of those things. Thank yous. This was great as always. And look in your emails for the recipes and ingredients tomorrow.
Great. Well, merci beaucoup, everybody, and see you next month. And bonne soirée.
Thank you. Good night, everybody.